Okay. Well, I've long been interested in meditation, but I often question if the meditation I'm doing is right or if I'm even going in the right direction. I include this map here because maps often let us know where we are and they help us get to where we want to be. Today, in the contemplative journey, we have two distinct types of maps. The first are the maps of old. These are the ancient texts and traditions where meditative traditions first started. The other maps are modern. This is the research and science being done on meditation today. This presentation, this thesis, will look to explore what findings, what benefits might come about if we have a deeper dialogue between these two types of mapping systems. Contemplative neuroscience is the modern way to understand meditation. It's the scientific study of it. But before we look at contemplative neuroscience, how is meditation even understood by religious scholars today? Well, Mallinson and Singleton say that meditation is a cultivation of advanced mental states. Philip A. Maas, in relation to yoga philosophy, says that meditation is ending the wrong identification of self. Samadhi, one of the two working concepts I'll be using in my presentation for meditation, is translated by Feuerstein as putting together. And Johannes Bronkhorst says that meditation is motionlessness of the mind. So what exactly is meditation? Am I supposed to be stopping something by ending it, the wrong identification of the self? Or am I supposed to be putting something together? Is the mind supposed to be cultivating something, or is it supposed to be motionless? Clearly, with all of these descriptions, it can get quickly complicated as to what type or what meditation really is. For this reason, because it's normally, by scholars, they look at the distinctions between traditions, I'll be looking at the commonalities, which often isn't the focus and thus provides a fresh perspective, especially when trying to understand meditation in the modern. So the first article I'll be looking at is titled, Opening Up Meditation for Science. And Stiffenschmidt wrote this article saying that science needs to start or should start to classify meditation to help in the study of meditation. But he says that this should be done in purely descriptive terms, and references to traditional systems should be avoided, to traditional spiritual systems. However, what shortcomings might arise if we completely avoid the traditional systems of meditation from where they came? Well, let's look. Frederick Travis created three distinctions of meditation. The first being, focused attention. So this is object-based meditation, such as, Krishna or divine form, focusing on a divine form, or something that's nice. A cow. I'm from Wisconsin, so. The next is open monitoring. This is non-reactive monitoring from moment to moment. So it's letting stimuli pass by without being attached to it, like a cloud, and it passes. No attachment. The last type of meditation he describes is automatic self-transcending, where you don't have any sense of self in your meditative practice, which is absent of focus and individual control. And Travis advocates for these distinctions because he says that there are distinct patterns within each category and few similarities between the categories. However, as many know who practice meditation, it is possible, if not probable, to move between any one and all three of these distinctions over the course time of a practice, let alone in one practice itself. So for this reason, it might be better to look at what's going on next. So Jonathan Nash and Andrew Newberg have taken up this dilemma, and they created a taxonomy. They're like, okay, you can't just do one or the other, let's see. So they create a taxonomy with all types of distinctions, and they have these complex methods that say that you can do any combination of one of the three types of distinctions we saw on the previous slide. But I mean, look at it, it can get really complicated really quickly. And on top of all of that, they have taxonomic keys for further distinctions as to what type of meditative posture are you doing? Are your eyes opened or closed? So they're trying to put meditation into one tiny little box for each practice so they can find objectifiable data. One of their guiding principles of their taxonomy is functional essence. So they say to understand meditation, they say, what is the purpose of meditation? And this is actually a really good idea. However, they say that the ineffable qualities of meditative practice are not amenable to science. So science can't even study this. So they're in favor of short-term goals over long-term goals because they say long-term goals present confounding factors. So they don't even want to touch these long-term goals that meditation might be interested in or was originally interested in. But again, as many know, meditation is almost always an ongoing process and deserves to be looked at and studied as such. And when we don't do that, we might be missing the forest for the trees. Or something similar to the blind man and the elephant, where the blind men have mistaken the elephant's body parts for everyday objects. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So they've missed the bigger picture. And it's not just me who is saying this. Davidson and Goleman, who Gayatri mentioned, have said that those who do research on meditation are too often in the dark about what they're actually studying. So, is there any value from the teachings of the past to help the scientific study of meditation? Well, to answer that, we're going to have to look at the teachings of the past. And the first text I'm going to look at is the Bhagavad Gita. And for those unfamiliar with the Bhagavad Gita, it's a story of Prince Arjuna on the precipice of war, loathing his situation, and to the rescue to console him comes Krishna, the divine God figure. And Krishna did not just advise him on his immediate problem of the war at hand, but he digressed to give him a profound discourse on the philosophy of life. What is this discourse and how does it relate to meditation? Well, again, the two working concepts that I'll be using throughout these texts is samadhi and dhyana. Samadhi is translated by Apte as meditation, concentration, or absorption. And the first instance we see of samadhi in the Bhagavad Gita is chapter 2, verse 44, where Krishna says, "Those who are attached to enjoyment and have carried away minds are not settled in samadhi." Fierstein translates samadhi here as concentration. Swami Prabhupada adds his commentary on this verse, saying that when the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it's said to be in samadhi. And samadhi is not possible for those bewildered by temporary things. So already, even at this initial onset of the first instance of samadhi in the Bhagavad Gita, we see a rift between contemplative neuroscience trying to look at those short-term goals and the Bhagavad Gita saying that they're looking for the opposite of that. So what are more qualities of samadhi? Arjuna also wants to know this, and he asks Krishna, "Oh Krishna, oh Keshava, what is the definition of one abiding in samadhi? How do they speak? How do they sit? How do they move about?" And Krishna says that they are unagitated in sorrow, devoid of longing, free from fear and anger, and generally unattached. Fierstein adds his commentary to this, saying that samadhi has two main aspects: the emotive aspect, which is lasting peace, and the cognitive aspect, which is prajna, or wisdom. The wisdom you receive when you open yourself up to the intuition in your meditative practice. Now, these are some qualities, and these represent more trait-like differences, transformations that I'll be referring to quite often throughout the rest of this presentation. Now, how can we put it together? Well, looking at our other working concept of dhyana, Apte translated it in his third translation as divine intuition or discernment. And he uses this from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verse 12, where he says, "From meditation comes the renunciation of fruits," or from intuition, the intuition you receive in meditation, comes the renunciation of fruits. So is the renunciation of fruits something that contemplative neuroscience is studying? Or is the functional essence, the purpose of meditation, to renunciate your fruits, not practice for any particular reason, which gives you knowledge that you can be free from grasping at transient things, which allows peace to emerge? So in the Bhagavad Gita, I've shown that it's aiming at longer term, transformative type of qualities in the meditator. But what are the deeper states, and what are some more concrete examples? Well, to understand that, we're going to have to look at the Yoga Sutra. And to understand meditation in the Yoga Sutra, we need to understand Yoga Sutra cosmology and Samkhya philosophy, which many of the presentators have already discussed, but I'll try to go into quite quickly. It's dualistic in nature with Purusha, consciousness, interacting with Prakriti, matter, and the goal of yoga is a disunion where Purusha can permanently abide in its own conscious nature. But to do this, you need a meditative yogic practice. So the hierarchies in the Yoga Sutra can actually maybe inform the hierarchies of contemplative neuroscience. Here, we have one such hierarchy written by David Schoenberg, or Poppy Schoenberg and David Bago, which is a progressive stage model of meditation. The higher up the model, the more refined the practice. But as you can see, they don't really go any further into what each stage means. However, the hierarchies in the Yoga Sutra do talk a lot about this in their hierarchy of meditation, which is called Samyama. It is described as dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Dharana is likened to concentration being momentary and broken, like drops of water coming out of a faucet. And the more developed the meditation practice becomes, it moves to dhyana, like oil or honey when poured, which is sustained and continuous. That's how the meditation practice is understood. These ideas could be implemented in the concentration stage. And this isn't the only way that the texts of old can help the modern contemplative neuroscience. In the stages of samadhi, Schoenberg and Bago talk about non-dual, and we understood that samadhi is absorption, so similar to a non-dual state. The hierarchies of the Yoga Sutra could help inform this stage right here, which they talk in a great deal about. The first one being vitarka. Here's the cow again. So focusing on the physical or the gross form of absorption and meditation. Then moving to vichara, which is the subtle form of meditation. And finally, which is like the sun, which emanates its heat or its light in all directions. And finally, ananda, or being so deep in your meditative practice that you're absorbed in bliss itself. These stages of samadhi could be implemented into the non-dual stage, just to get a better picture. And this isn't it. The last stage, or the final stage of samadhi in the Yoga Sutra is the asampragnata samadhi, which is described as other, but it shows that it's not the final stage, and we could look at what are the similarities or how can this inform it here. And these aren't all purely theoretical either. As Feuerstein says, the models were originally and primarily maps for meditative introspection, intended to guide the yogin in his exploration of the mind. These maps are records of internal experiences rather than purely theoretical constructions. They're descriptive rather than explanatory. So these are maps, and these are descriptions that the yogis have found out, and these maps can help influence the maps that contemplative neuroscience creates today. But what are other ways that they can use it? To answer this, we'll look at our final text, the Shobogenzo. And the Shobogenzo was written by Zen master Dogen in 13th century Japan. And it talks about Zazen, or seated meditative practice. And actually, by talking about Zen, we're actually talking about, which Zen comes from the Chinese word Chan, which actually comes from the Sanskrit word dhyana. So by talking about Zen, we're also staying within the frame of this thesis presentation. And as Bielefeld says, references to the practice abound in almost all of Dogen's writing. So this is a great text to access when just thinking about the meditative practice itself. And Dogen talks about the mental aspect of the practice in the chapter called The Lancet of Meditation. And he opens up this chapter with a student asking the master, how does one think about not thinking? And in typical Zen fashion, the master says, non-thinking. Well, Dogen explains that non-thinking is the act of meditation itself. It is not thinking even of itself. And I don't think it's too hard of a parallel to see between this non-thinking and Purusha permanently abiding in its own pure conscious nature. And these aren't the only similarities that the texts share. They also share one important similarity when they all say that meditation's ultimate goal is not anything short of liberation or transformation. The Bhagavad Gita talks about this when Krishna tells Arjuna not to stop short of the final goal. Ananda Samadhi, the bliss-like state, is the penultimate state in the Yoga Sutra, and the Zazen Shin, or this current chapter, the Lancet of Meditation, Dogen says, recently, however, Some say once one attains the state in which the breast is without concerns through concentrated effort at seated meditation, that this is peace and tranquility. How could one who holds such a view be called a person who studies the Buddha Dharma? So essentially he's saying, don't stop short of the goal, keep going, go for those liberative, transformative aims. And what does that look like in Dogen's practice? Well, in a simple but very enigmatic way, Dogen talks about this in the King of Samadhis chapter. And he says, Shikantaza, just sitting, practice, is Shinjin Datsuraku, or the body and the mind sloughed off. So practice is liberation, with the practitioner supposedly taking their practice to all aspects of their life. And this equals non-attachment and awakening. And the Soto Zen Text Project says that in studying Zen, the essential thing is awakening. So I've shown that through all the traditions, they're aiming at liberative, transformative means. So what are ways that contemplative neuroscience can access this? Well, one such way that's already been found out is that Yongey Mingyur, Tibetan Buddhist monk, has been shown to display 25 times higher baseline gamma brainwaves even during his sleep. These monks say that these gamma brainwaves are like a rich, full panorama of experience. And I've tried to highlight the deeper paths of meditation. There's so many paths, and they're all amazing, but I've just tried to highlight the deep paths of meditation. One of these paths is Rupa Dhyana that has not garnered much research yet. And it was coined by Jadguru Sri Kripaloji Maharaj, who says that his disciples, or whoever takes up this practice, should meditate on the form of divinity at all times. There seem to be similarities between Yongey Mingyur, who displays these gamma rays even during his sleep, and Rupa Dhyana asking for the meditative practitioner to meditate on the form always. And then again, it just highlights the commonalities that all three of these traditions have. But what are other ways that science can use this? Well, there's this idea of a second person bridge builder that Goleman and Davidson talk about. They talk about the second person in their book, where they say that a person such as, or this is my idea, they say a person such as a researcher, practitioner, could actually recruit some people very versed in their practice and help create research protocols so that the researchers could help find out more information or transformations about the practice. And this second person actually, in some sense, comes from many traditions, one such being the Zen tradition, where the master acts as a mediator between the student and realization, who themselves has already been there and is able to guide the student on their path there. And referring back all the way to the beginning of my presentation, when we asked, what might science be missing when they completely avoid the traditions from which the meditative practices came? Well, this is just one clue. This is just one example of many I think can be unearthed if we continue to use the traditional systems and help science understand meditation in its deepest form. So, the conclusions are the interconnectedness between the traditions. Researchers can start to be in alignment with the goals, the original goals, the deep path of meditation, which will help them be more informed of the traditions they're studying. And hopefully this just continues to lay one more brick of understanding piece by piece, bit by bit, so that we can find the true knowledge to help everybody. And talking about Thich Nhat Hanh, as Dr. Chappell has said, and Brooke mentioned, and I'm going to share a quote with him that's very pertinent to the theme of this presentation. And if nothing else made sense, at least his quotation will. So here we go. Thich Nhat Hanh says, "Science is the pursuit of understanding. Spirituality is also a field of research and study. We want to understand ourselves, the world around us, and what it means to be alive on Earth. Understanding our suffering gives rise to acceptance and love, and this is what determines our quality of life. The spirit of practicing mindfulness, concentration, and insight is very close to the spirit of science. We don't use expensive instruments, but rather our clear mind and our stillness to look deeply and investigate reality for ourselves. And most of all, we want to be happy." With the insights of science and spirituality, we have an opportunity in the 21st century to conquer the root causes of suffering in human beings. The 21st century can be characterized by the insights of interconnectedness and by efforts to explore new forms of solidarity and togetherness. May his dream become a reality. May we find this interconnectedness, explore these new forms of solidarity through our deep, deep meditative practices. Thank you.